What's up, guys? In this episode, we're going to attempt to flock the dash before we throw it back in the car. Stay tuned. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is remove some weight. This piece, all of the top pieces actually come off, and we're going to keep these, but underneath this dash, see if I can pull these off with one hand. There's a bunch of plastic for the air conditioning vents and all that stuff that we won't need, so we're going to go ahead and cut out a bunch of the carcass of the dash just to remove some weight. All we really need is the main front piece once we clean it up and put the flock material on there, just so the interior looks a little bit finished, but we won't need anything underneath that. So we're going to go ahead and remove all of that stuff, and then we'll get started on taking care of all these cracks on the passenger side dash. All right, well, that's pretty much it for the carcass of the dash there. There was just a couple, plastic tubes that basically went through the back, one for the defroster and one for the front vents. It just really had to be pried. It was like thermally glued on there. I don't need any of this in here, but I'm afraid that if I remove some of this, we might lose some of the structural integrity of the dash, and it's not going to really take much weight out of it. So when it comes to this, I mean, we're pretty much done. We're just going to go ahead and take care of the passenger side now and get all the cracks taken care of, so that when we put it all together and do the flocking, you have a nice even finish. All right, so now that we've got the vents out, I went ahead and pulled the defroster piece as well, just because it'll make it easier once we flock the dash and to get in these cracks and sand it down. But what we're gonna do, you can use what's called padded dash filler. But what I've seen online is that a lot of people that use it say it's a lot like your normal body filler. So just typical Bondo. This is a lot cheaper and it's easier to find. I had trouble finding padded body filler or padded dash filler locally. So I just went ahead and grabbed this because, like I said, people online that have done this process say that they think it's pretty much the same as this once they've opened it up and used it. So we'll give it a try. If it doesn't work out, you guys will see. So what you want to do, the passenger side of the RX-8s have a big problem with the dash cracking, and that's not uncommon for a lot of cars actually. It's not just the RX-8, but luckily it is isolated to just this piece in the RX-8. The rest of the dash is fine. But if you look close, you can see the cracks, and what happens is it pushes up, and you want to basically take a Dremel, or if you want to do it by hand and sand it down, you want to make a cavity so that then you can put the body filler in, and then it's smooth. But right now it's pushing out, so what we want to do is take a bit a lot like this. It's just an angled bit, and we're going to run it through all these cracks and make a channel. And once we have that channel, then we can go ahead and fill it in with body filler, let that dry, sand it down, and then that way, once we put this flock on top of here, you won't see any of these cracks. It'll just be a nice smooth dash. so if you couldn't tell before, there were a lot of cracks. Now some of them were really small, like some of these you could barely see, but if you looked close you could see that they were starting. So I wanted to make sure to stop that before it really grew into a big crack, and that way it doesn't pull up through the flocking material that we put on there. I could possibly go a little bit deeper on some of these, but I don't think it's going to be necessary. But what you want to do, like I said, is basically get into all the cracks. So you remove that ridge that's kind of made from the two sides separating and it pushing up. So you get in there and you bring that down, and you also make a nice valley for the body filler to sit in. And since this is a rubberized kind of dash, because of the heat of the Dremel and everything, it kind of made some of the rubber and plastic material melt on the sides. So that's why I ran across it with some 320 grit sandpaper real quick to just kind of smooth off the edges, so those aren't sticking out. But we're going to go ahead and fill this with body filler, and then we'll let that cure, and then sand it down, and we'll see if it needs another coat of the body filler after that. All right, so we've got this all sanded down. Now that we've already grooved all the cracks, what we want to do before we start working with the body filler is go ahead and clean the top of it off with some acetone, and that'll just make sure all the grease and oils and stuff that are in there are gone. All right, so that's about 4 minutes, and it's not really usable anymore. It's already cured up to the point where it's not even spreadable. So I got most of it done, but I'm gonna have to come back, mix some more, and fill in the rest of these, and then we're gonna wait half an hour to 40 minutes before it's ready to go ahead and sand it smooth. All right, so we're on the next day. We've got this already cured and sanded, and we've sanded the side of the dash. All we need to do now is cover everything with acetone to make sure that we pull up all the oils that are in the dash pieces. That way the adhesive for the flock has a good surface to stick to, and then we'll jump on flocking. So the first thing that we're gonna do is acetone, and then we'll jump over to the flocking kit, and I'll show you the steps for that. All right, so like I've mentioned in some previous episodes, we're gonna use flock to cover the entire dash. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it's used a lot of times with rally cars. They cover the whole dash. It's almost like a suede looking material. And what that does is it prevents glare on the dash and hitting you in the eyes as you're driving on the racetrack. So it looks cool too, so that's a good side effect. But what we got is a kit from Just Flock It. I'll put the link in the description below. But it comes with a couple bags of the flock material. It comes with the applicator, and then it comes with some of the glue. Now, when you use this, you're going to want to use a respirator and have it in a well-ventilated area. And it's a good idea to have help. I've got my wife here. She's going to help me apply it, because you only have 10 to 15 minutes to get the glue on and the flocking material on before it's basically cured where you can't add any more. So we're gonna try and do this really fast. We're gonna set a timer for 10 minutes. That way we have an idea of where we are in that 10 to 15 minute range. You can roll it on. There's also spray guns. It comes with a little brush, and then we've got some other paint brushes that we're gonna use. And it's pretty simple stuff. It's only going to stick to where you have the glue. So you really don't have to tape off, any of the areas that you don't want it if you know exactly where you're going to have it. There's a couple areas where we don't want it that are really close to where we do. So I'm just going to tape off those lines, and that way if the brush goes over, we don't get any excess. And then the other thing is we've got boxes set up with all the parts, and then bags. And so that'll allow us to keep all the extra flocking material that doesn't stick to the adhesive, because we're also going to be flocking the door panels. So the excess that we have from these dash pieces we'll be able to reuse on the dash panels. So let's go ahead and get started. Whew. Well, that 10 to 15 minutes went by real quick. It ended up probably taking about 20 minutes. So hopefully the last pieces that we got to, you know, hopefully it still adhered to it. It should. Obviously, by the time you get to the last piece with glue and then get back to it with stuff, it should still be about 10 to 15 minutes. But without an extra person, I don't see how this is possible. I mean, it just goes so fast, and you want to try and get enough glue on there. And then every time, you know, you pump that stuff on, you can only have half of that applicator full. So then you got to just keep going back and filling it back up. So, you know, so if you do use 2 bags for an entire project, you know, you're talking about filling that thing up probably about 5 or 6 times. And so, you know, it's probably a good idea, while you also have a second person there that can help put the glue on the different pieces, to also have maybe a second applicator, which are like $3 or $4. So I should have gone ahead and got one of those, but I had no idea that that it would take that long to apply everything and run out of the time that you're given. So we probably could have done the pieces at different times, but we went ahead and tried to knock them out at once. And because the RX-8 dash is made up of a bunch of different pieces, I wanted to do them separately so it had clean lines and edges, and so that we'd still be able to pull the thing apart when we need to, and that it wouldn't mess up any of the flocking material. So we did them all separately in their different boxes. So now what we're going to do is we're going to let these sit for about 12 to 15 hours, and then you can actually move them. And they say not to move it around until then. But once it sits for 12 to 15 hours, then we'll be able to shake off the excess and capture all the excess material that falls off of it, so I can use that for the door panels. So tomorrow we're going to come back and we'll be able to knock off the remaining material, and we'll see how it looks once we put it all back together. All right, well, this is the final product. It kind of turned out how I wanted it, but you can definitely tell that this was our first attempt, and I'm going to try and correct a few areas. But as you can see, it's got a nice textured finish to it, and most of it turned out pretty good. The passenger side dash cover here, which is where we did all the sanding and everything, you can kind of see it. I don't think there was enough glue on this piece, because there's also areas on the side where the flock material didn't sit and stick. So it either sat too long before I got the material put on it, or it just didn't have enough glue. Couple things that I would say, if you were going to attempt this, definitely get a couple applicators, so you know, so you can have both people actually you know, applying the flocking material after doing it. And if you're doing this on an RX-8 and you have the option of taking these pieces off and doing them separately, do it. It will give you more time to do each piece and to do it right. and then that way you're not rushed as much trying to get all this stuff done, and then, you know, it turning out not really the way that you wanted it to. So the other thing that I would say is, if you're going to do this, you know, it says to do it in boxes, and you know, to line the boxes with bags so that you can collect the material. And I'll agree, it does allow the collecting part to be a lot easier. It made applying everything a pain. As you could see, had to lean over the boxes and lean down in there to put the glue and then to put the flocking material. And you know, and honestly, it shows on the bottom. You know, even though we lifted these pieces up and sprayed flocking material, the top we were able to see where there was extra glue running through, and we could put more material for it to absorb. Whereas on the bottom, you know, after we set it back down, there could have been areas where either we didn't get it enough, or you know, or the glue came back through the amount that we put on there, and it needed more. Luckily, in this case, most of that won't be seen, because you know, once it's mounted, it'll be kind of underneath it. But just put it over a big bag or something, or don't even worry about collecting the material, because, you know, honestly, having the dash come out the way you want it to is more important than collecting the leftovers to use again for something else. So I wouldn't put it in the box, but that's just my recommendation. Alright guys, well, thank you so much for watching. You know, the dash, it wasn't a ton of work. You know, cleaning up the passenger side a little bit was, you know, but if your dash is clean, you don't have to worry about that. We're going to go ahead and throw this into the car, and the next episode we're actually going to start putting some of the pieces back together to get the car rolling, because I'm going to get it on a trailer and we're going to go get the engine swapped. If you liked this video, or if it was helpful for you, please give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you want to continue seeing this project or any other projects that we have coming up. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Take it easy.